I ended up getting an award at the age of 17 in public service, a 40 under 40 award. And I was smiling people's faces, the whole nine. But what they didn't realize was that I was mapping out in my head. I try not to get too emotional about it, but like funeral arrangements, because I had decided that I wanted to leave this earth because I had been convinced that like life would be better on whatever this other side was. But I'm so glad that God gave me the strength to still be here. Because when I go back and look at it and I think about this generation of young people, I feel like every day we wake up, we are literally fighting to keep our identities, because society strips it from us. Society strips our identity by telling us that if we don't look a certain way, if we don't dress a certain way, if we don't have this amount of money or whatever the case might be, then there's an issue with us. We struggle with it as adults. So imagine how kids are struggling like me with it, and they're still trying to discover who they are.
Hey, welcome back to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm excited you're here. And if you're listening for the first time or you're back for another great episode, thank you for joining us. I want to start by letting you know that your story and what you may be going through, they matter, and you're not alone. So try not to worry about what chapter you're in, because if you trust God with your story, He's going to breathe life back into it. So I want you to sit back with the community that cares about you in hopes that you feel God's love as well as see God's glory in Men's Real Stories. So before we get started, I need you to do me a quick favor. You know what that favor is. I need you to go ahead and click that thumbs up real quick. If you haven't done it already, you'll be glad you did. Then if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, listen, it's free of charge. It'll cost you nothing. You don't have to worry about it showing up in your subscriptions later on for $9.99. Listen, just go ahead and click it now. I'll wait on you. All right, so now that's out of the way. Thank you all for your support. I know that this podcast, I just want you to know that this podcast is nothing without you and the men who God has put it on their hearts to say yes to joining me. And I appreciate all those who have shown interest by filling out our Google Doc form so that God can lead us to our future guests. But today's special guest is a young man I met back in 2021 when he was a college student. And at the time, we were both living, as I would look at it, our best lives, or at least that's how it appeared on the surface. You know, I was impressed by his long list of titles and accomplishment, his service in the Army and the numerous awards he continued to receive. And he even had a plan to run for office in the future. And interestingly enough, back in 2021, he was a spokesperson for like suicide and mental health awareness. But, you know, it's crazy because I didn't pay much attention to that because as I looked at it, I was fine, right? As a lot of us are. Little did I know that just 4 months later, my own mental health would take a significant hit. However, things changed, not only for me, but also for my guest in 2023 when his life began to transform. And I'm excited to hear more about his journey. So please join me in welcoming our brother, Juwan Blocker, to the episode. What's going on, bro?
What's going on, man? Thank you so much, Rob, for having me, man. It's an honor to be here in person. I'm super excited about today's conversation.
Yeah. No. Well, you know what? And I'm glad you said that. Here in person, because the crazy thing is that, you know, I reached out to you and I was like, hey, bro, this would be super cool if you could make it down, not just because, you know, we could sit across from each other, but so that we could just kind of like talk about like what your plans are in the future with what you're doing, and just kind of like, you know, see how we can both help each other. Yeah. Not only from a podcast standpoint, but just from a creator standpoint of what God is trying to create through both of us. And so, bro, I'm glad you're here. It's crazy that, you know, it was not crazy. I think it was truly an investment in yourself that you drove all the way from Washington, D.C. to come down. And, you know, I've had, you know, that deserves an air horn. You know, and I don't normally use sounds, but, you know, I think that deserves an air horn. That, like, not too many people have made that investment to like come and travel here. And I'm excited about future guests that I know that I have traveling from different places, far and near. But I truly believe that it's an investment not only in yourself, but also in what God is doing in your life. You know, and not that can't happen across the screen, but But I think just the conversations we have even before now, like the conversations over dinner where a family sit down together, and just all that we've done up to this point has just truly been encouraging for me as well as I hope for you as well, because absolutely. I truly think that it was God's plan for us to not just have community where, you know, we sit down and do podcast episodes, but we do life together where we continue to encourage each other and look in maybe see areas where you can say, hey, look, bro, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but have you ever considered this? And like offer perspective, because as we both were talking about at dinner, you know, sometimes you can only see things from one direction. You can only see things from the lens you're looking at it. And sometimes it helps when you have brothers in Christ who can say, well, you know, bro, I'm sitting over here and the way I'm looking at it, it looks a little bit different now. And I'll just you know, I'm not a big person on advice, but I also like to just say, let me just tell you what my lens looks like and how I'm seeing it. And maybe I'm seeing it exactly how you see it, but I also see that there's an importance in being okay with saying, hey, bro, I see it a little bit different. And not that I'm trying to bust your bubble, but I think that all I can offer is the perspective, and you can say, hey, look, you know, I'll consider that. I'll take that in consideration. And so I think that's always the beauty of like just men coming together and sharpening each other, because you know when men get together and they begin to sharpen each other, it's less about the pain of the sharpening, but the growth that's going to come from it, right?
Exactly.
So before we even jump into this conversation or this ongoing conversations we've had, I'm going to give you an opportunity to go ahead and introduce yourself to all those who are like, okay, so who is Juwan Blocker?
Yeah. Thanks, man. Well, you know, first and foremost, I mean, this story, my journey isn't mine. And over the last 11 months, I've lost over 40 pounds. But it wasn't just physical weight that I lost. It was also mental weight. And now I'm on a journey in life where I want other young men in particular to identify what God's purpose is for their life. And I strongly believe that you can do it when you remove some of that physical and mental weight around, you know, your mentality that's prolonging your ability to chase after God's purpose for your life. And so, I mean, that's who I am. I mean, I've had several titles, but like I said, over the last 11 months, you know, I've learned that those titles are important and there's a place for titles, but your titles aren't who you are. It's just what you are doing.
Yeah.
But you know, one of the most important titles that I have is a man of God, and then also a husband and a father of 4 kids and 1 on the way.
Nice. Congratulations. That's super awesome, bro. And look, I completely agree with you, because I think those are the titles that we don't ever lose. I mean, if you think about it, you know, titles come and go, and you're right. They have a way of identifying us. They have a way of, and I'm sure you're used to seeing it, in that, you know, you ask a person what they do. They'll tell you what they do. You ask a person who they are, they'll probably tell you what they do.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's true.
I mean, you just asked me that question. And so it does become very confusing, in that a lot of times outside of what we do, we are very much confined to the identity that we've been given by other people. We've been given by the degrees we got, and everything else that gives us an identity, and we take that identity and we live out of it. And so for those that don't know, you know, you said you're 40 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, okay, like, what did this guy look like before? Is this a health thing? Was this a health concern or scare? Like what made you, or what started this whole, you know, and I'm sure we're going to dig into that even more today, but like, what started this whole journey or desire to want to drop 40 pounds? What was it for?
I mean, you know, just being honest with you, I was in military training. I was sent over to Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was at Camp Robinson, and this was August of last year. And, you know, there wasn't much for me to do besides go to class, and I was in my dorm room. And so this was the one time in a long time that I was basically isolated and by myself outside of classes. And so I had no choice but to look at the man in the mirror, which was myself.
Oh, shit.
And, I don't forget it. I took my shirt off and I looked in the mirror, and I wasn't happy with the reflection that I saw and the image that I saw. And, that made me text my wife. I literally texted my wife. I said, "Hey, babe, look, I'm not happy with the way that I look. I need to get healthier for myself, but then also my family." And so ever since August of 2023, I've been, at the weight loss. My reasonings, I noticed over the last 11 months have changed. But to be completely honest with you, for a large part of my childhood, but then also early adulthood, I was always the obese one. I was always the one, in the family that was fat. The one that had the man boobs, and unfortunately, made me feel very insecure as a man, like to take my shirt off. And a lot of that started to play into my head, and I was on TikTok and looking at some of that propaganda. And I tell people that at that time, I started using the gym as a graveyard to bury my insecurities. And when I did, it led me to religiously going to the gym, sometimes at midnight, getting out of there at 2:00. And then, when my kids would get up, in the evenings, I would have to change that routine. And so my routine changed from like late at night to going early in the morning. So I would get up 3:30 in the morning and be in the gym until 6:30. And it was because I was escaping a lot of pain and remembering the fat me and the one that folks made fun of a long time ago, as fuel to basically motivate me to want to lose the weight.
Sheesh, yeah.
But when I was going to the gym, I just wanted to get out that frustration. I wasn't in therapy, and so I wasn't focused on losing weight as a byproduct. It was just the relief that I got from being in the gym. But I was just burying things, not really facing them.
And it's crazy because you said I wasn't in therapy, but I was using gym as almost like a way to cope. And it's crazy because as you said that, I was thinking about how many people consider the gym, their workout, their therapy, and how that is it's similar in that they go to the gym and they bang on weights and they throw up weights and they just exhaust themselves because in a way it allows them to distract themselves from everything and all the things that are fueling them to go in there. I love how you said that it was almost like my insecurities and the hurt that I carried from how I felt about how people treated me, how people looked at me, pushed me into there. And so you were fueled by something that in a way didn't have to be a part of your story, even though it was a part of your story and it wasn't your fault, but it didn't have to be what continued to fuel you. It was just the thing that motivated you at that time. So imagine if that motivation stayed in place to where it continued to push you back into the gym, but never really go. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who have successfully lost weight, have successfully changed their external transformation, but their internal transformation is stuck in a place of I'll show you, or I'll prove to you guys, or I'm good enough, and so it's still very much rooted in like hurt and pain. And I think we kind of talked about that even today, like we were talking about like some of the people that we recognize that a lot of their messages come from pain, and how it, maybe if they stay on a certain subject, you may not be able to tell, but the second you put them in a different environment and they talk about things, the message is clear that like, oh shoot, like there's some pain there, like that what you just said seemed very harsh, because it was rooted in like an insecurity or a pain that you experienced at one time, and like you're speaking from that pain, or that child inside of you is speaking from that pain of what they experienced that you never addressed. Because and he's holding on to that, like he hadn't forgot about it. That 13-year-old you that experienced certain things, he's still frustrated and mad at each and every person, and so he's in there like, I'll show them. I promise you, at the end of the day, I'll get the final say, because he's still holding on to how he felt about that because it's never been addressed. Like, nobody's ever gone back and like sat with him and been like, hey bro, listen, that sucked.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sorry nobody was there for you when that was going on. Like, that sucked. And so, like, you said that was the initial push. So how did that progress as time went on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything you said was just spot on.
Okay.
Let me just start with that. I think that things started to change once I was on the news. So here I go, very strict on my diet. After maybe 4 or 5 weeks, folks started noticing a difference. So I sought that validation. So that happened. But I strongly believe deep down in my core that God wanted something else to do with my fitness journey. He didn't want me to do what the average man would do, which again is to use the gym for the insecurity purpose.
Right.
He wanted to use my story, my pain, right, for purpose. And so what ended up happening was that a couple of months into the journey, I don't like to use the word randomly, but I started doing like videos on like my cell phone about like my journey. And it started off just talking about fitness stuff and like, advice on what to eat. And then it came an opportunity I'll never forget. And my wife, we still laugh about it, but long story short, a news reporter in Fox 5 had posted on her page that she was looking for some entrepreneurs to basically be featured on Fox to have some questions answered. And so I shot my shot. I wasn't an entrepreneur, but I said, let me just shoot her an email about who I was, what I did, and how I lost this weight. And I shot my shot. Didn't hear back, didn't know if I got selected. And then I was in the car on the way to work and I was listening to I Trust in God. And I said, God, I promise you, I don't know what you're doing with this fitness journey, but like I feel led, to like, I don't know what you're doing, but I feel pulled. And I said that I know that if it's a door that's going to open, you will open it. And then like 2 or 3 days later, my wife runs into the room. We're getting the kids ready for school. And she's like, your godmother said you're on Fox 5. And I was on Fox 5, featured for my weight loss and had a brand ambassador or a guru, if you will, in the entrepreneur space answer questions about how I could expand my audience from my videos. And it turned out that his client was David Shantz, and he offered me 2 tickets to go to the podcast summit. And from that moment, I had realized that, wow, God is doing something here, and there's something more to this.
Yeah. No, that's good. And it's crazy because, and I think we literally right before we even hit record, we were talking about how like the beauty of God is that if he's written our story as he has already into the future, he already knows what's going to happen. So it's a matter of like being like, okay, God, it's not just I trust you, but I know that you've already written a story for me that is for my good. And so I trust you not just in these moments that I see, but the ones that I have no idea what's going to happen. I think that's really where trust and faith go hand in hand of like, I trust you and I got faith that you're going to do this, not the way I want it, but like in a way to where I can sit back and be like, you knew all along. Like this is better than what I thought it would be, right?
Exactly.
And so, I think that those are the moments where we can sit back and say, man, trusting you was, I couldn't have written that better. Like, no. I don't get me wrong. Maybe I would have done this my own way.
Yeah.
But to be featured and to have like my story being taken off on the news for people to recognize and celebrate this journey that I've taken on focusing on the health aspect of my life from a physical standpoint and commending that, and then saying, hey, look, we want to almost invest in your future of where you're going and your message by putting you in a place where somebody can invest in your goal to further your message. And I think there's nothing like being able to take a message that only you can share, only you have this story, and be able to have people say, let me show you how to do that.
That's true. That's very true. Like I knew podcasting existed, but I didn't wake up saying, hey, I want to start a podcast or I want to be on podcast. Everything just seemed to organically start to happen. I mean, even my brand accountability partner, like I started calling myself AP because at that time, when I had several failed attempts with weight loss, I realized that I didn't necessarily have one particular person I could go to. So I was seeking advice and validation from everybody.
Oh,
and so
that's
I,
good.
I got to a point where I was praying and I realized that I needed to figure it out myself. And so when I talk about AP or accountability partner, I had to through God, of course, build accountability partner, because accountability partner didn't exist in terms of the weight loss. And so now I consider myself an accountability partner because through my journey, I started to learn what it takes to be able to lose that weight.
Yeah.
But it's not just me being your accountability partner or saying that I'm perfect, because I'm not. It's the thought process that we all need accountability partners. And I strongly believe deep down in my heart that God sends people, right, as accountability partners to ensure that we are ultimately fulfilling his purpose for our lives.
For sure.
And so these doors everything has been organic. I mean, even the way that you and I reconnected, I've been invited to a potential podcast in like 2 weeks. My job has expressed interest in investing finances in, my brand, and then also having me do some work with their podcast. But again, like, this journey isn't mine, so I'm just being obedient and letting God lead, and I just have to go in that direction.
No, that's good. That's good. And I recognize that, like, every journey, like we're sitting here now looking at what God is unfolding, but I think the beauty is when you look back to where, like, Juwan was when he was 7.
Yeah.
And you think about a lot of the things that you went through, because I think our story don't just start when God says, hey, look, if you'll give me your story and your life, I have a far better story written for you. I think our story is beautiful because we can look back and like, what was it like growing up? Because you mentioned earlier that, growing up in your family, you were always looked down on because of your weight, because of how you looked, and maybe even just, who you were as a person that was different than a lot of other kids your age. What was that like growing up, carrying the story and the story that God put you in that may not have looked like everybody around you?
Yeah. I mean, I hated myself for a long time. I knew that I was different, but I was trying to find my way. And so, like, I would try to fit in, at one point wearing the pants sagging. I was a rapper at one point. They called me K9, like all this crazy stuff. But I got into, like, creative writing, and I was doing creative writing. I started in like the 5th grade because I was trying to escape my reality. And it wasn't that I had like a bad lifestyle. I just grew up in an environment where money was always a struggle, and I knew deep down inside I always wanted something. There was something more and bigger. And so, from like poetry, in poetry, I learned that if you don't define your narrative, then society will define it for you. And so what that ended up leading into is me getting involved in student government. And in student government, I learned that if you don't advocate, right, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu, is what we were taught.
Sheesh.
And then that led to me leading several different demonstrations in high school. And I got to the point at which I was wearing suits to school every day in high school, and almost getting suspended for it. And then I ended up going.
Getting suspended for wearing suits?
Yeah, for wearing suits, because it wasn't a part of the school uniform. And so, I would come. Yeah, but at the time, my mentality was that I didn't want to dress and fit the negative stereotypes that oftentimes at that time folks had about black men. And so I said that if I was going to show up to school, I wanted to show up, suited and booted. And so that's what I did. Okay. And it led me to spoken word poetry. Again, what I learned through spoken word poetry is that, like, you have to try to figure out what your story is, so that you can define it and society doesn't tell you what it is, but so that you can use that gift and the platform that you have to advocate for the voiceless. And then that naturally sprungboard me into politics. And so in the state of Maryland, Prince George's County specifically, they have a student member that gets elected by the student government associations countywide to serve on the Board of Education. And so I ran twice, and then I eventually won, and I represented 130,000 school system students. But here I was, I had my own office, I had a laptop, a MacBook, an iPhone, and I had office hours, and so I was a member of that board. And that from there is what changed my perspective about what was possible at my age, in terms of using my voice, regardless of my socioeconomic status.
Right. Because I mean, like at that age, to experience something that a lot of people never get. I mean, an office, a company computer, a phone. It almost like now says, okay, so at this age, if I could accomplish this, then anything is possible. And it's crazy because when I first met your cohort of students that came through my company, you know, for that internship, it was wild because I remember thinking, you know, when I looked around and I looked at the students' faces all throughout the room, I remember looking at you and I was thinking, okay, like, who is this? Who is this guy sitting over here looking like he came for an interview? Like he's fully. He's got the tie. And I'm not gonna lie, I was impressed because there's nothing. Nothing says I am serious about this to me more than a person taking the time out to say, I came dressed just in case you guys want to give me an interview today. Wow. But I think the better question is always like, well, what's behind that? Like, what told you to wake up and dress that way today? Or what told you to wake up and choose violence? Or what told you to wake up and go that direction? And whatever it was, sometimes it's a story that you begin to write based on the past experiences that now say, if I don't show up this way, then they won't take me serious because nobody ever took me serious. Or if I don't show up this way, I'll blend in. And I want to stand out. I don't want anybody to ever overlook me. Maybe because all their life they were overlooked. And so you never know the story that's behind what you see presented in front of you a lot of times in people. You see something, but you're like, okay, I can sit here and make jokes or whatever, but like, what is this guy's story? Because his story will speak to the person that's standing in front of you, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever. There's always a story that's there that I believe when you understand the story, it changes how you look at that person. It changes why they show up and present themselves, and it gives you so much more context to be like, oh dang, like that's my story. Like different. Look, and the crazy thing about it is, it's like it spit out different outcomes, but the story's the same.
It's the same.
He, like his direction was, I'll show you. He began to make sure he didn't blend in. My story was the exact same story, but I just chose the other direction, and I was like, yo, I don't feel like proving nothing to none of y'all. I'm taking my ball and going home. And so I show up and just like this, whatever, like it doesn't matter anyway. Like, everybody always looked down on me. Nobody ever believed that I would make it. So like, I'll prove them right. I'll show them I'm not going to make anything. You know, my life, when I looked around at where I started off and where I was living, nobody got out of there. So why would I get out? Did you ever like feel like that was like something you looked around and said?
No, I mean, I think it's a good point, right? Like, you do have folks that, you know, you can either continue to be victim to the story, or you can look at the story, acknowledge it, reference it, but say, hey, I'm going to trust in God and I'm going to make that change. And that's what I was. I grew up on free and reduced lunch, the oldest of several siblings. I moved around. I might have attended maybe 6 or 7 elementary schools. I've been in school suspensions. I've had teachers tell me that I wasn't going to amount to anything. And I was in fights. And so a lot of people had written me off. But the one person that didn't was God. And again, I didn't have the best relationship at the time because I had my parents, like, you know, non-denominational, had Pentecostal, had Catholic. So I had a combination.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had
Trinity.
Yeah. So it was kind of like all over the place. But like, you know, I think I consider it my enlightenment period. So once I started getting serious, I got serious about the spoken word poetry once I was given an opportunity to perform a spoken word poem. I had a mentor too, Neville Adams and Clinton Smith. Clinton was a teacher through Teach for America at Parkdale. And at the time, I had no idea, but this guy was doing stuff for the Bill Gates Foundation, and he was already the standout teacher doing spoken word poetry. And he says, hey, Juwan, let's do a group poem together talking about basically being resilient, you know, despite your socioeconomic status and your background. And so I'll never forget, we went to a very nice hotel in Washington, D.C. for the Teach for America Gala. I was on a stage freshman year of high school with him, with maybe over 300 people, and I was introduced by Senator Cory Booker, and like got on the stage and performed this group piece. And for the first time, I felt like, whoa, like, because it was completely different than what I was exposed to, which is why exposure at an early age, especially that positive exposure, is important, because oftentimes you don't know what you don't know. And so after getting so many business cards and being acknowledged and like folks seeing me for me and my story, I couldn't go back and see what I saw, unsee what I saw.
Yeah. It's almost like you were addicted to that feeling of like, I'm not going back. I'm only going forward.
And that was it. And then, you know, after that, I mean, you know, I was coming up doing the Michael Brown, you know, tragic situation. And, you know, I got to the point where I looked around and my school was predominantly Black and Latino, and we weren't having those community conversations about the impact of the verdict. And so I literally, for about a week, I would go to school with these different silent protest signs, walking around the school, and I was getting, you know, picked on for doing it. And folks didn't understand, like, it was almost like they were oblivious to what was going on in the news. And I was just trying to give us an outlet to express how we felt about this. And we got to a point where I went to the Student Government Association and we decided to do a die-in. So Michael Brown's body had laid on the pavement for about, I think it was 4 hours and 30 minutes. So we staged a die-in for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And we blocked off.
What's a die-in?
A die-in. So a die-in was basically, so for folks that remember his body, you know,
I do remember the story.
So the die-in was literally us just laying on the ground, sort of, you know, resembling the fact that his body had laid on the pavement for that 4 hours and I believe 30 minutes. We did it, but we did it for 4 minutes and 30 seconds to get the message out. The whole purpose of the dying was to bring more acknowledgement to what had happened, because the school didn't necessarily give us an outlet to express how we felt about what was going on. The crazy thing about it was that when we did the dying, like we had took over the entire like entryway to the school. And we didn't know that a member of the Prince George's County School Board was doing a school visit at the time. And so the school board member comes in, Peggy Higgins, and everybody started losing their minds. The principal was in the meeting. They're paging everybody. The principal, all these folks are rushing out and they're yelling at us, get up off the ground. We don't know what you all are doing. If you don't get up, you're going to get suspended. And we stayed there for that entire 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And then, like, you know, my principal at the time, who passed away, she was apologizing to the school board member, and that school board member said, hey, no, let them do their demonstration. I understand what they're doing, and it's important. And then like 2 days later, I show up to school. I'm in like my business class, and all I hear on the intercom in the middle of the school day is Juwan Blocker to the principal's office. I say, yep, I'm getting suspended. My principal, God rest her soul, I miss her, but she gave me a good conversation about why it was dangerous for what we did, because it blocked school lunches and so many other issues. But then she handed me the phone. She said, somebody wants to talk to you. It was the Washington Post. They had done an interview about that demonstration, and ever since then I've been at it in terms of my advocacy, and it was insane.
Okay, you know, and you know, one of the biggest things that I even took from that, because I appreciate you sharing that, and you know, and of course I'd never seen that. I had never seen a lot of the demonstrations that were going on during that time. Outside of the like the riots sometimes and the people walking the streets and all. But what that does speak to is how important it is that we, in some way, form, or fashion, we showcase what we're holding up or what's pent up inside of us sometimes when things happen and we don't know how to address it. Because sometimes it could be as simple as like, hey, look, we're gonna do a stand-in for this, or hey, we're gonna go and do a candle virgil tonight, or we're gonna lay out for 4 minutes and 30 seconds, just to show everyone or bring light to what we have had to live with or watch on our screens that we still don't know how to process. And a lot of times that's the extent of it. Like, okay, we laid on the ground for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. But did they ever consider to bring in like maybe counselors that could allow us to maybe put into words how we were feeling about things? Because a lot of times we don't quite know how we feel. We just know that we're unhappy. And I don't think that changes in life. I think that in life, I know men get a hard rap for not knowing how to voice what we're going through or how we're feeling. But a lot of times the truth is that we don't take the opportunity to find the space, whether it be in our homes, in our communities, or in a office with somebody who we're paying, that will help us get out what we've been holding on to.
It's very true. It's very true.
And so I think that if it starts as a child, if as a child we're shown that it is okay to voice like what we're feeling, what we've seen, what we're processing at a young age. Like, okay, we've watched a man not only be killed, but his body lay out on the ground for hours. What in turn does that say to me as a young man who looks like that man?
Exactly.
How has things that you've held on to played a big role in your life, whether it be in a good way or a negative way, that has kind of, you feel like, kind of left like a hurdle in front of you that you weren't able to get over?
Sure. Wow. That's a good one.
Yeah. And I mean, you can think about that, because I recognize that sometimes we try to bury those moments. We try to like just completely brush them away to where you don't have to like live out of that. But in a way, whether we address it or we just bury it, it's still a part of like even like down to like that happened.
That's true.
I brushed it away. I just got numb to it. But now every time I see a police officer, I'm immediately triggered and my body gets tense, and I'm just like, all right, calm down. And why am I so on edge? Like, why am I so tight and rigid? Why am I scared? Like this man has been put here in this area to serve and protect and just make sure that I'm okay. But right now I'm afraid for my life. Why is that? Why am I like that? And a lot of times it's because what I witnessed is still held up in my body, and I don't know how to shake that.
No, that's true. And I think for me, it's not that I not only wanted to be accepted. Simply put, I wanted to, like, I never really understood, to an extent, like some folks would complain about not having a platform. And like I said, me growing up, money, unfortunately, in some cases or often cases, was always an issue. And so despite my socioeconomic status, I knew that I had to create a like if I didn't have a platform, I was going to create one, because I've always had like, what if we had an outlet? And so when you don't have that outlet, in my opinion, you have to create it. And that's all I was simply trying to do. And it was just something that bothered me about the culture. Like, everybody wanted to be the same.
But without the outlet, like let's say when you didn't have the outlook, where did your voice go? Like who heard your voice, or were you the only one that heard your voice? Like a lot of times we're waiting for that platform to say how we feel. And think about how many people we look at nowadays on TikTok or on Instagram who are going into these rants about things because nobody around them will listen. So nobody can stop me from just yelling at this phone right now, and maybe somebody will listen. Maybe nobody will listen, but if I hold it inside, I'm gonna explode. And there's so many of us that are like that have found ourselves yelling at a phone, yelling at a screen, to be heard by somebody.
Yeah.
Even if it's one person that abused, instead of holding it inside
Yeah.
and allowing that to walk through life with us.
Yeah.
Because of how much it hurts, the pain, the way we show up and yell at people who we feel like are at fault because of what I'm carrying around.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hurting right now and it's your fault. And
Yeah.
and honestly, this guy, he just happened to just have gotten a job as a police officer and happened to have a badge, and he doesn't have anything to do with that, but you look like him.
Yeah.
And vice versa. How many
Yeah.
times have people looked at us and been like, yeah, you're just like all the rest. You're like the other guys who came in here the other day who stole stuff. Or you're like the other guys. You look just like the other guy who came in here and did something, some heinous act that I have never been able to let go. And because you look somewhat like him, I'm going to take it out on you because of what I've been carrying since then.
Yeah.
And bro, like, that's and right now I feel like I'm overcharged because not that I've been carrying that, but I speak for a lot of people that I hear their stories, and in a way I empathize with them and saying like, yeah, I'm sorry that happened, man. That sucked. That never should have happened to you.
Yeah.
Like, that never should have been a part of your story. But now you walk around with that thing that happened, that incident, that experience that you can't shake, and it's become a part of your life, bro.
Yeah.
Like you are stuck in that experience in an ongoing loop, and what God had planned for you, unless you break out of that loop, you will be stuck in an ongoing loop.
That's very true. Yeah.
That when God has so much more planned for you, He has so many more chapters of how He wants to use not only what you've been through, but also what He's going to take you into. But you're stuck, in a constant loop of like, nobody cares about us.
Yeah.
They'll never give us anything more.
Yeah.
They don't ever expect me to amount to anything more. You were literally the voice for many people around you who felt it, but didn't know what to say.
Yep.
And it was easier for you to do it for them, and they may sit back and laugh, but they were like, yeah, what he's saying.
Well, but that's how it was. I mean, there were so many different times in which, I would go out and do it, and I would tell my good friend Caleb, I would say, yeah, man, I'll probably get suspended, but it's okay. Like, we've had multiple demonstrations, and again, it wasn't demonstrations to have demonstrations. They had a meaning, and like I said, it was just making sure that folks that felt certain ways about current events could have an outlet to express themselves, and that's all I ever wanted. And there've been multiple times in which we were on the news for it. I'm sitting there, doing a demonstration, and then I'm like texting a news reporter and NBC4 planning on, hey, meet us up at the hill. I'm gonna throw some students up there so that they can have their voices heard. But I will say that while all of that happened, I think that the scary part for me, and it took me until now to realize it, was that because I saw that as an outlet in terms of acceptance, because folks would rely on me because I was that person for them, that I started to attach my identity to that title. And so the dangerous piece about that, especially being in politics, you see, I can't speak for everybody, but if you notice in politics, some folks, they're like, man, this guy or this woman has been on the ballot for like 16, 17 years. Why is that? I think sometimes or oftentimes folks in politics, they have to watch, they have to be so politically correct that there are certain things that they're not going to say, because if they say it, even if they feel convicted to say it, but they don't, they're not going to, because they're worried about winning this next election cycle. But then you also have folks that have been in for so long, and they're in because they've tied their existence to that title, and if they lose the data, they lose that title, they don't know who they are. And I was in that situation after I did some great things on the school board, but then I had a few folks call me and say, hey, can you run for the actual seat? So I was going into my sophomore year, I think it was, at Bowie State University, and I was 18, I think at the time, either 18 or 19, youngest person on the ballot at the time running for the school board. I won my primary election, didn't have a car, had the door knock, go to school, door knock, raised a little over $16,000, I think. But I lost that general election. And once I lost, everything came crashing down because my identity was tied in that position.
So this is the part where a lot of people are like, so what happens when your identity is tied to a position that either is taken from you, or you had put all of your chips in on being that, you knew that, you had already picked out the office, the suit,
that was me.
The car,
that was me.
The lifestyle, you had taken it all on, you were ready to walk in, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, and you don't win. What happens? Like what does that in turn tell you?
I mean, I was depressed. At the time, I didn't know what was next. So like I was even also banking on that. So doing great, but then also banking on that as being also a paycheck as well, because I wasn't working. I mean, I'm in college. So, instead of getting a regular job like everybody else, I mean, I worked some odd and end jobs like UPS. I was a package handler, to try to raise some money for my campaign. But, that was like early in the morning, but I didn't have like stable income. It was just focusing on running. And so when I lost, I sort of literally I felt like shattered glass. Like I had to pick myself up. I didn't have folks that, could be like, hey, we understand you. Like, here's this next opportunity. I had to really figure out what was next. And at the time, again, my relationship with God was there, but it wasn't as strong as it was now. So when I go back and I reflect on where I am now, God was with me that entire time.
For sure.
I just didn't do the work or wasn't mature enough at the time to be like, hey, let me talk to God about it.
Yeah.
So I would go seek job opportunities from other folks. And then I said, okay, so what's the next best thing? I still want to serve my community. So I was getting ready to be a firefighter, volunteer. That didn't work. And I had met my fiance, that's now my wife, and I needed to make a couple of dollars. And so I had this crazy idea of joining the military. And so, I ended up taking an internship and then, got shipped off and joined the Maryland Army National Guard at the time. And that was what was next for me. And then, I ended up getting a job opportunity to work for a former state elected official, had a full-time salary, and was doing that while I was in college.
Wow. So things progress. But would you have said that like, this, I mean, of course, that wasn't your plan. It was just the plan that you could pull together and muster up. And I've been there before where like my plan wasn't going the way I thought it was supposed to go after college. And I remember thinking, okay, these student loans are about to come. And so like, how am I going to pay for this stuff? And so I even looked towards the military and was like, okay, like, I guess, it's funny because I've talked about this before on an episode where like I can remember it like it was yesterday that the lady in the recruiting office, understood why I was there. I told her, hey, look, I got bills to pay. I'm about to graduate from college. I don't have anything locked in. Everybody's got jobs. I don't know where. And honestly, it really mimicked how it looked when I got out of high school. I didn't know where I was going to college. Everybody was going off to college. So it was almost like a repetitive thing of like, I was always behind. I didn't know what my next move was, and I wasn't actively pursuing anything. And so she was like, I feel like you're taking a knee-jerk reaction to what's going to happen tomorrow by trying to fix it today by jumping into the military. Now, it's my job to sign you up, but I feel like what is ahead of you is going to be far greater than you just joining the Air Force.
Wow.
Now, I sit back and I think about that to this day, and a lot of people in the military that I've talked to, they're like, that's not like a recruiter. Recruiters don't do that. They don't. They have a hard time getting people in there. So if you gladly walk in, they're going to sign you up because that adds to their pay.
That's facts.
I think about the fact that what that lady did that day for me she may have gone home and been like, what in the heck did I just do? But what God had planned for me, even though I wasn't even looking for God, I wasn't walking with God, I didn't have a relationship with him, I wasn't even going to church. But yet he knew he still had a plan and he didn't need me to be off course. And that's crazy because I think like just because we're not walking with him sometimes, just because we're not prescribing to what he wants for our life, and we haven't surrendered our plan to him, doesn't mean that he's not still navigating us and shepherding us from getting too far off course.
That's true.
And a lot of people feel like, well, God's never been there in my life, but they miss those little moments where she set me up and put me back on course for my assignment, even though my assignment was still shattered, even though it was still my plan. She pushed me back onto a course that God had for me, even though he knew all the crap I was going to walk through. And the truth is all God wanted from me, from you, he wanted a relationship. He wanted me to come and spend time with him just to say, all right, God, like, I don't know what I'm doing next, but you do.
Yeah.
I believe you do. And so if you could let me in on that, that would be great. If you could just guide me on that, even if you don't give me all the details, just point me in the best direction that you want me to go. Even though I want to go left.
Yeah.
Is left, and it's funny how sometimes we've already got our mind locked around, like, I'm going left anyway, right? Yeah,
it is what it is.
And so God's like, well, then what you want me to say?
Yeah.
Like, you've already made your mind up.
Right.
And I know that's been me, where it's like, and then this is even after I said, God, I'm all in. I've been like, but God, I ain't going there.
Yeah. He's like, I go this route.
I ain't going there.
Yeah.
And it's weird because in a relationship, ooh, this is good. This just came to me. You remember when you first started talking to your wife, y'all were dating, and y'all may have had conversations, and then one day you said something on the phone to her or in person, and she got really quiet. And the rest of the day was just really quiet.
Yeah.
And you're like, did I say something wrong? Yeah. And then that night, she was like, all right, well, bye. And you're just like, okay. Something's not right. And so you're sitting there just like, okay, well, I'm sure this is going to blow over.
Yeah.
And like a day goes past and you don't really hear nothing. And you're like, all right, like, was it that bad?
Yeah.
And I look at that the same way I look at it when it comes to, like, when we go to God and say, hey, God, I need your help. God, I need you to intervene. God, I need your direction.
Yeah.
And the truth is that I've already made my mind up. And God's sitting there like, what do you need me for?
Yeah.
If just because it's not, you don't have a piece of paper on the outside, I see your heart. I see your thoughts. You've already made your mind up. Why do you need me?
Yeah.
Are you coming to me just so you can say you came to me? Yeah. So when you do what you want to do anyway, there it is. Check off the box of like, God, I came to you. Yeah. Check. But it's like, God's like, but you didn't come to me to look for me as an answer. You came to me almost as like a religious practice. Of like, I had to come to God, but I don't really want what he wants for me because I've already made my mind up that I'm going this direction. And unless he comes and says, yes, son, I bless that direction, I don't want to hear it. Yeah. Because if he tells me to go the opposite direction, I don't want to hear that.
I ain't trying to hear it. Yeah. No, that's, and I think that when we decide to go in the opposite direction, God is a gentleman, right? So God,
come on,
God is going to wait for you to welcome him in. So I just feel like, and it's not to say that you won't struggle, because there's struggle either way, but when you're doing it without his anointing, so you can have purpose, but if there's not anointing, right?
Come on,
then it just won't work out. And I strongly believe, and I've had several instances of it where, God don't want you to go in this direction. You decide that you want to go this way, and then you find yourself repeating the same lesson, but perhaps in a different scenario. Because, like, so when I talked about losing the race and not identity, when I went on to work for the elected official, he ran for governor. He lost. I had put all of my chips and my possible next job opportunity and job security, if you will, in that person. But oftentimes we talk about job security, and I've heard this before. I don't know if it was Todd or who brought it up, but it was like we talk about job security, but what about God's security? And so I found myself in a situation where I had no choice but to go back to God, because after, my boss lost his election for whatever the reason it was, I had to figure out how I was going to pay my bills and what my next job opportunity was going to be. And believe it or not, that I had applied for all types of jobs, trade associations, chambers of commerce, and I would get the interview, but then I would get to the second or third interview, the last one, and it was like, all right, well, we decided to go in a different direction. I was literally a couple pieces of paperwork away from being a police officer for the stability. And I started to convince myself, at one point I was a police explorer, so I started convincing myself that it's not, God, I mean, it's not, I don't believe that it's fully what my calling is, but I got to pay these bills, and, the math is not mathing like they say, so I'm going to go ahead and settle for this. And so I almost settled, and it's not to knock that profession at all, because there are folks that are really called for that profession, but I knew deep down in my heart it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And so I had no choice again but to have to put my trust in God. Yeah. And I had to wait for his timing. But I didn't learn that lesson, apparently, from when I had lost the school board race. So it came back up again. So I wonder how many folks, your viewers, find themselves in what I call dry seasons, where it's like, they find themselves in a new situation, but the principle still applies, and they haven't overcome that principle. So they have to keep repeating it until they get it.
Listen, I literally, as you sit there talking, I'm like, yo, he's talking about the wilderness walk.
There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go.
I like dry season too, but it's like where you're just like the Israelites, where you're walking around in the same wilderness in circles, because you don't see that what God is trying to bring you into is a possibility. Oh, I don't think we can go. Oh, I don't think we can take them. Oh, I don't think that's where we're supposed to go. Maybe God's not strong enough to get us through there. Maybe it's not our time.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then you just walk in circles.
Yeah.
Keep making circles. You'll keep walking, making the same mistake over and over again until you say, all right, God. All right. Like I'm clearly doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm surrendering to what you want to do. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
How do you want this to look? And those are the moments where, in repentance, he sees our heart is truly in a posture to say, okay, now let's go this way. The way that you never wanted to go, the way that you didn't think was a possibility. Let's go this way. And it's almost like you find yourself almost like, Peter and them in the boat, when they were like, man, we've been doing this all night long. Like, you want me to throw the nets again? You know what, man? For you, I'll throw the nets again. Yeah,
exactly.
But we've been literally, we've been doing this all night long. And I love it, because I was recently watching The Chosen over again, and I was watching that scene where Peter looks at Jesus and is like, and Jesus just kind of looks at him like, and he gives him this look, it was almost like this moment where you're just like, what was that about? But he gave him that look and next thing you know, literally the whole boat, just you just watched the nets just fill up, and he just looked back and hold up. And I think we all have those moments where it's like you're like, all right, God, I'm gonna trust you, but this sounds crazy. More importantly, anybody who's watching right now probably thinks I look crazy, but he's just like, don't worry. When it comes to me, when I've told you to go that way, I don't look crazy.
No,
I'm not gonna look crazy. And don't get me wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. Hold on. Just for those who are like, bro, 2 years ago, Jesus told me to go this way, and bro, listen to me. I'm talking about fire and brimstone. And let's not downplay that. Just because God tells us to go a certain way, just because he redirects us or pivots us, doesn't mean this is going to be a smooth sailing walk.
It's true.
No, I mean,
you got to say that again.
Yet, just because he tells us to go this way doesn't mean it's going to be a smooth sailing walk. There are going to be things on that path that are going to make you be like, Okay, wait a minute, guy. Like, just check it back in real quick. You did say this way, right? Like, just clarifying that you said that you want me to go this, because
that's
right now the way this is looking, bro, I just looked ahead, and you know what? They coming to pick up my car tomorrow.
That's right.
And the little bit of money I have, I'm just trying to keep the lights on here.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, like, either I'm gonna have no lights and no car, or I'm gonna have a car with no lights. But God, regardless, you told me to go this way, and what's happening right now? Like, because like I assumed that this was going to be for my good and your glory. Yeah. And I don't see no glory coming out of this story right now, God. Like, when I tell everybody what's happening, they're gonna be like, boy, hey, look, they're gonna be teasing me like Elijah was teasing all the prophets of Baal. Like, hey, look, what happened? Did your God take a nap?
Yeah.
And our God is one thing I know about him is that he is faithful.
Amen.
And that in his timing, he is going to do a thing that's going to make people sit back and be like, hold up, what you mean, like Robert Moore? You talking about the one who had no car and was like burning candles in the house because he had put all his trust in God?
Wow.
You mean the one we was joking about? What you mean? He's like the new director of the department. He's out here and he's making moves now, not just for his good, but for everybody around him good.
Yeah.
And I think that is when we know that God took us around on the right path, because it's not just for our good.
Yeah.
He uses us just as a vessel to bless everybody that's around us.
Absolutely.
So not only is our power on, but everybody on the block's power is on.
That's true.
Because of our blessing. And so
that's true.
I mean, like, so I truly feel like in both of our stories, because like we were talking about how, like, and I even said it in the introduction, how like at the time when I initially bumped into you for the first time, I didn't know my life was about to take a turn for the direction it took. You didn't know that your life, after you left Coke and you experienced all the, I think you even won the internship. I saw you holding a big check after that. I remember that, and I was like, duh, I saw that one coming. But like, we didn't know that what was going to transpire next would look at it, because from what it looked like, bro, I'm being asked to talk to interns. Like, come on, like that's big deal. But I didn't know that where I was speaking from and the life I was living and showcasing you guys, where y'all were like, man, I want to be like that guy. Like, if he can do it, then we can do it. Yeah. Not knowing that, like, bro, like I put on. I mean, like, I was putting on, and like I like, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I was definitely a guy who had done a lot of great stuff in the company I was working for, but my life outside of that company was in such shambles that the only place that I could smile and act like everything was good was there in front of you guys, was there at work. Wow, and I remember you told me even about moments in your life where, because of your role, you had to smile for people. You had to like make it seem like everything was good. But they didn't know what you were truly carrying as you sit there and you told people, hey, look, your mental health is where, you know, the suicide awareness things, you're giving them tips and you're talking about how important it is. But like, what is it like when you're telling everybody else how important that is, but yet you're sitting over here and you're struggling with the same thing you're telling people about? What is that like?
No, I mean, you hit it right on the head. I think politically, and even now, right, the stuff that I'm posting and talking about, I'm somewhat of an anomaly, because we're taught politically, you know, to be politically correct, not to say certain things, you know, because of how people are going to judge you, because, you know, you need to get reelected or whatever the case might be. And I knew for a long time that I was dealing with depression, and but I was really good at hiding it. And so, you know, I had like my own period where it was supposed to be for school board business. And so I had an office with a door. And so what a lot of people didn't know was that I would spend several days and times in there just like randomly just crying. And I was crying because I just wanted to be accepted, and I didn't understand like folks would come to me simply for business stuff, but it wasn't like, hey, Juwan, can you come to this party or things of that sort. It was always them pulling for me, but me not feeling worthy enough, or like I would say to myself, why am I not, I'm good enough to do you a favor politically, but like, am I not good enough to be able to be normal and go to parties and things of that sort? You
just be invited as yourself.
Yeah, as myself without the title.
Yeah.
And, I ended up, it's difficult. Like, it was very challenging. Like, I felt like a fake, but I knew that I didn't want to let people down. And I felt like I had to hold myself to a higher standard based upon the title that I had. And I shared it on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, but I ended up getting an award at the age of 17 in public service, a 40 under 40 award. And I was smiling people's faces, the whole nine, but what they didn't realize was that I was mapping out in my head. I try not to get too emotional about it, but like funeral arrangements, because I had decided that I wanted to leave this earth, because I had been convinced that like life would be better on whatever this other side was. But I'm so glad that God gave me the strength to still be here, because when I go back and look at it and I think about this generation of young people, I feel like every day we wake up, we are literally fighting to keep our identities, because society strips it from us. Society strips our identity by telling us that if we don't look a certain way, if we don't dress a certain way, if we don't have this amount of money or whatever the case might be, then there's an issue with us. We struggle with it as adults. So imagine how kids are struggling like me with it, and they're still trying to discover who they are. And so like this fitness journey, this podcasting, like, all of this for me, I see it as a vehicle, as a platform to not only share my story, but to give these folks a platform and to allow them to know that God is still with them even in those dark moments.
Yeah.
And that if they not only turn to him, right, but also therapy, and have both together and be authentically who they are, then they'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sheesh. That was, bro. You. That was a mouthful right there, bro. You literally hit every box for why I saw what God wanted me to do in this podcast, of why it wasn't just about men facing themselves, men seeking therapy, men seeking counseling, men seeking community, but also men seeing the importance of their relationship with God.
Yeah.
And when you put all of that together, that is truly, that is my story. Like this came from a moment of revelation that was only God through therapy.
Yeah.
Like therapy alone for me was just a place where I went to just realize that, like, bro, I've been carrying this stuff and it's so heavy that I need some place that's safe that I can just come and set it down and be myself for a second.
Yeah.
I am tired of carrying all these titles and being all of this. And in that moment, as if that wasn't heavy enough of all the stuff I was carrying, God was like, yeah, but like now it's time to shake things up, and now it's time to understand why you've been carrying that. And if I can connect the dots for you on what it was that made you begin to carry that, then you can now cut the cord on what you're carrying and set it down.
Amen.
Because you address what it was. And bro, listen, and it's funny because as me and you, as we talk, and whether it be here or off here, I see a lot of like me and you.
Yeah.
Especially as you share more with me, I'm just like, yeah, I've been there. I felt that. Like I felt like the guy who was as good as what I could provide. And if I'm providing you something, then great, y'all love me.
Yeah.
But like once you've gotten everything from me, it's like, all right, so like, hey, look, what are we doing later on?
Yep.
Oh, no, we don't. We don't have that type of relationship.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, dang. Okay, I thought that was stupid. I don't know why I even think. And so you go through these moments where you're trying your best to, almost in a way, you're trying to it's a people pleasing thing of like, if I please all these people, then they'll see my value.
Whew,
then I'll be enough.
Yeah.
Then they'll want me around.
Yeah.
Then I'll be important, and I'll be valued.
Yeah.
And so like, let me just keep grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. Okay, so let me jump back a little bit. Who was it that initially started your drive to show your value because they didn't see it?
Wow. You know, I think, and I love my dad to death, but I think perhaps it was him, and maybe even my grandfather. My grandfather retired law enforcement. I'm very proud of all of his accomplishments, but I always felt like my dad was there, but like I didn't get to see him as much as I would have loved to growing up. I'm not sure what the dynamics were, because some of it I was smaller for, but I have no choice but to face it now and talk to my wife about it. But she said, perhaps you're trying to, or you felt the need to have to prove yourself to people because you were truly just trying to prove yourself to your dad. And I think that's a piece of it. Just wanting to not only be accepted, but like, hey, look at what I did. And then it sort of took shape. And now I'm at a point where, like, with this fitness journey, where all of this stuff is coming back full circle. And now all I can say is I feel lighter because now I'm able to be the authentic, uncut, Juwan Blocker, and I'm still trying to figure out who he is. I'm getting a glimpse through this podcasting world and things that God has opened up. But I think that is probably where it all started. And it just took me a long time to acknowledge it. But again, also like being picked on for the way that I looked. And then being able to say, okay, well, all these family members were picking on me, or even friends, like they used to call me Moly Moly because of my birthmark. So like, you get to the point, at least I did, where it's kind of like, all right, well, my body's not up to par. So I don't have that advantage over somebody, but I seem to have an advantage and getting acknowledgement for having these titles. So let me grind harder and harder for these titles because I'm accepted.
Yeah.
And it just had a snowball effect.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, bro. Because I know that made you dig back in a bag that you were like, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to talk about that. I recognize that it's in those moments where we like pull that out and like bring it out in the light.
Yeah.
That one or two things happens, or both. The hurt and the pain of it, it starts to diminish.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt as bad anymore, and it comes out to where you can now address it like, yeah, it did start there.
Yeah.
And so in order for me to heal from this, I gotta start there. Like I gotta start with like facing the fact that all of this started with the story I wrote when he never showed up the way I needed him to show up.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be a part of my life. He didn't show up to save me from everybody else that was making fun of me and take up for me and say, hey, this is my son and whom I'm proud of. It was almost like I was there to fight for myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly like writing this story that hopefully he's seeing.
Yeah.
That he can one day come back and be like, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And we're waiting on that.
Yeah.
In a sense. Like, man, you accomplished way more than I ever accomplished. Man, I'm so proud of you. And it's crazy how long we'll wait for that, bro.
Yeah.
Because it will validate this wound that's never been validated.
Yeah. Yeah.
That in a way, as long as we don't affirm ourselves and recognize that they don't hold the key to our validation of being enough, that we were already enough, that we are enough, then it stunts us to the growth of his validation.
Yeah.
Or her validation or their validation. And I say that because that's my story too.
Wow.
Like of that, like I felt like I needed that.
Yeah.
I felt like I couldn't go forward without that.
Wow.
And I'm doing all of this so that I can get it. Like eventually he gonna see.
Yeah.
Right? Or they're gonna see. Or I'll show them. And so we let them fuel us here. And we get here and it's like, we stand on top of that mountain, like, look at what I've done. And nobody's even there to be like, man, I'm proud of you, man. Like we thought you would amount, but no, like nobody's there. So you're just up there like, and you're like, all right, well, I got this now.
Yeah.
Doesn't really feel like much anything.
Yeah,
like, well, I thought that would be more of a celebration.
That's true.
Thought that would fill up that hole inside of me where I feel empty and I feel missing and I feel unworthy, and I thought it would just make it all disappear. And it's like, nope, it's still there.
Yeah, it's still there.
Still feel the same way.
Yeah.
Still need that validation. I sure would like somebody to come and tell me you did such a great job. Hey, here I am though. Here I am.
Wow, man.
And I say that coming like remind me, how old are you again?
26.
26. I say that coming from like almost double digits of 40.
Wow.
Not 46. But like I'm not there yet. I ain't rushing. But like in my 40s, recognizing that like, man, I wish that I had got to this point, bro. If I could get back 20 years, bro, that our enemy took from me, walking around in a circle. Walking around in a circle, lost to my identity, bro. If I could get that back, man. But because I can't get that back, I recognize that it's in what we're doing here.
True.
That can give it to you.
Yeah.
So you get it back. So you don't lose that time.
True.
So you don't waste 20 years.
Yeah.
So that in itself is enough for me.
Wow.
I think that's enough for me. Like I remember we were talking about that one time, and I was like, we're like, bro, bro, how can I repay you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Take your message.
Look, y'all, I told Rob, man, like he offered to help me do my own podcast and, some talking head content. And the first thing out of my mouth was, how can I, how much is it? Just let me know, and I'll send you what you need. And he said, look, man, everything is free. He said, the only thing that I'm asking you to do is to go out and make more disciples. And when I tell you, and I'm not just saying it to say it at all, but I have not ran into many people like you at all. 2 people that I can think of, 2, maybe 3 max. And the fact that you said that, like, that sent goosebumps and chills up my arms when I read that text message.
And this is why I'm so on fire about this, because I recognize that like I can't take the credit. I recognize it as I become more and more like him.
Yeah.
I can see what people see because I saw it first in him. Wow. But I recognize that if I can't show that to others.
Yep.
And you know what? Let me just say this real quick. Yeah. Now, I have a relationship with my brother, but I sure hope I don't get an onslaught of people like, hey, what about me? Okay, so wait. I just thought about that. Wait a minute. I love everybody, and I try to help. And it's bigger than a podcast episode. And most people that have had a podcast episode with me will tell you it just wasn't no podcast episode. Yeah. Like it's now a brotherhood. We're in a community. Like there is a community of men who don't just see me as like, oh well, yeah, Rob hosted a conversation with me, but like, no, we catch up from time to time. We'll shoot text messages like, hey brother, how you been doing? How your family doing? How can I pray for you? How can I support you? Because I recognize that it doesn't just end after the conversation goes, because if the conversation ends and this ends, then it's kind of like, well, that was great, but like, what's next? Like who can I talk to, or where do I go when I'm like struggling with this again? And I think that shame on me if I can't show up and give you the same love that God gave me when I felt like I didn't deserve it. Because I always go back to that, bro.
Wow.
Like I didn't deserve his love, bro. I like to this day, bro. I cry every time I think about how shameful, how ugly, how I mean, I'm talking about when it comes to the shame that I carried, bro, from all the stuff that I've done, and for somebody to tell me that they loved me despite all of that, that they still had a plan for me, and all of that, all the shame I was holding, all the hurt that I had carried and hurt other people, I still to this day, I just it makes me lose words just thinking about how in that moment he was like, and I still love you.
My God.
And I didn't love me enough to want to do it. So to be anything like Christ, bro, to turn around and love others and be there for others and support you and things, bro, it's I feel like it's what he's called us to do. Everybody wants to know what their calling is, what their purpose is. Love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, everything. And then love others the same way you love yourself. So if I love me enough to like say, okay, hey Rob, you know, then it's not just an inward self-care taken care of, but it's also the outward of like, hey bro, how can I support you?
Yeah.
How can I take care? How can I help you with things? I think that's what we're all called to do. So in one way or another, that's all of our calling. Even if you don't know what God's calling you into, start to love on others the way you start to love on yourself. Receive his love, internalize that love, truly internalize that love.
That's right.
And then pour that love out on others.
That's right.
And if you can get that right, there's no telling where God will take you, where he might take you. But I think that's do that. Wow. Do that. If you ain't done nothing else, do that. And I truly believe that what God is going to do in your life when he sees your posture towards other people, it will expand because he knows that he wants to now use you as a vessel to like pour into others. Like, okay, well, I'm available. I wake up every day available.
Wow.
Every day I'm available. What you want to do? Where you want to go? What we doing, God?
Yeah.
I'm available.
Wow. Obedience.
Ooh, that's a big one, bro.
Yeah, obedience, man.
It's one thing to be available, and then God be like, okay, so I need you to do this right here. And you're like,
you're like, nah.
Nah, I'm good. Like, shoot me another one.
Yeah. Let's try it again.
Shake that back up. Give that to him. What you got for me? Like that was not for me.
You got to get through that obedience first.
Yeah.
And I'm working on that. I know it's easier said than done. I'm saying it, but sure. You know, I'm working on it each and every day.
Yeah. Well, I think it's every day it's an opportunity to be obedient again. I think every day you get an opportunity to be obedient. Sure. And some days it's a matter of like, all right, a month ago, God, you told me to go and do this. All right. I've been dragging my feet. I'm gonna go and do that.
That's true.
That was me. I'm not gonna lie. I listen. There were things I remember on my first run when I was like, all right, God, I'm on fire. Hook me up with something. Hook me up, God.
Hook him up.
And he was like, here you go. Yeah. Want me to do what? Oh. All right, give me something else. Else. That's gonna be a long term. That's gonna be a long term goal. Long term goal. Like okay, I'm gonna have to get some reps in before I get to that one. But sure enough, though, like the thing is I never forgot what he was asking me to do. Even when I was like, God, we gonna have to get some. I'm gonna have to build up to that. But like. There was moments where like he'll give you something and know that you gonna struggle with it. Know that you're not gonna want to do it and sit there and be like, all right, well, I'll be here waiting on it. Like I'm, just hey, look, you rip the Band-Aid off, or you can do it slow, how you want to do it. But I obedience. More importantly, trust me. Like I get it. It looks stupid. Trust me. Trust me.
Yeah.
How many times have we told our kids? How many times have you looked at your kids, looked your kids in the eyes and been like, trust me?
That's true. That's real. Quite a few times. Like, I don't know. Just trust me. Like you said, God is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So, you just make it, the thoughts are flowing because I'm thinking about, and not to go too far, but challenges. I always say that oftentimes I find that life presents us with more challenges than success, because the whole purpose of a challenge, right? If you change your perception, your perspective, it's so that you can adapt and grow stronger, so that you can overcome it and prepare for the next thing and the next thing. But if you go through life with no challenges, then often, or you have, like, for example, a ton of money, then are you really going to believe in God? And there are some folks, right, that, and I'm not putting people out there, but I'm sure there are folks that they look, their faith matches their bank accounts. And so when there's an overflow in the bank account, they're confident, right? Like they're good. But then when the account is negative and you don't know how you're going to pay X, Y, and Z, you don't have the belief, right? Your belief doesn't match what God can do. Yeah. And so I often have to put myself in position, especially in times where I'm struggling, where I'm like, all right, God, the math is not making any sense. So I can either do what most people would do, right? Which is the opposite and start freaking out, or I can just be at peace, pray, and know that everything is in your hands. Continue to work, but also understand that you're in the midst and have the final say. Yeah. And that's where I am with a lot of things. Yeah. Still working on some things, but I've learned to now change that perspective, because I don't know how, I couldn't, the weight loss stuff. Like, if God didn't give me the strength to wake up every day, to want to have the breath and the ability to eat, the health to do it, it wouldn't be possible. I can't do anything. I can't do anything without him. I can't. And yeah.
But you know what, though? It takes so much for people to get to that place, because they've only been doing it without him for so long, according to the way they see it, that it's like they have taken on the perspective that it's me, myself, and I. Who do I go to? Me.
Me.
Who helps me? Myself. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. And they truly live out of that. Yeah. And that if the ship goes down, well, hey, I that's on me, and I have to build a new ship at the bottom of the ocean. But they never see anything outside of themselves that's greater than themselves. It's true. So they are doing life on their own. And you spoke about like well, their faith is only as big as their bank account. So if my bank account is big, then what faith do I need, right? But there are so many people that have learned, no matter how big your bank account is, there are some things that your bank account can never get you out of. Yep. Like there are certain things that health scares, health things that people find themselves in, that it doesn't matter how much money you can't buy a whole new body. No. And so there are a lot of people that have gone down with the ship because they didn't see anything outside of their money and their own willpower to continue to fight. They didn't trust that God could do anything more, or they never experienced. They never saw stories like this. They never heard stories of where people are like, listen to me, God took somebody who was dead and gone, who was so far in the darkness that he was literally a walking corpse. Wow. And he looked and he took that person and he breathed life back into their story and into their life. So if nothing else, I think my story and your story can truly be a testament to somebody who right now feels dead right now. I agree. They feel dead in their story. They feel like it's all over with. Maybe they don't have any money. Maybe they don't have any resources. Maybe they have all the money in the world. But what they're being told right now by a doctor or whoever is that, you know what, you only got a few weeks to live. And I wanna right now say, listen to me. Your story is only over when you decide that you are done with it and you don't trust that God can do anything else in it, because I have seen too much to not believe that God can take something that doctors, that man, that money, that everything is saying and say, okay, but let me hold it. Let me have it. Give it to me. Give it to me. I want you to give it to me. Like, do you trust me with it? Give it to me. And it's in those moments where we surrender it to him to say, you know what? I'm fresh out of it. Yeah. All the money in the world, can't do anything with it. No money at all, but still can't do nothing with it. I run out of resources. I run out of everything, all options. Everything I have says no. Yeah. And you're asking me for something that's dead. Why? Wow. Like, they already told me it's over. Why do you want this? Wow. I know that the way he sees it and the way we see it are completely two different things. We only see as far as what they said it would be.
Yeah.
We only see as far as what they told us and what it's looking like and what's going on around us.
Yeah.
We can only see things from one lens, and the way he sees it is like, oh yeah. I'm in next week, and man, you should see the dance you're doing right now in your living room when you get this news that you will live again. You should see the dance you're doing right now in church or outside your job or inside your job, where you jump up and you start dancing and crying because you just got news that everything you thought was dead and gone is alive again because you gave it to me.
Because you gave it to him. And in all honesty, right? And I'm sure so many folks can relate to it, but let's be real and honest. A lot of us, and I know myself included, would not have believed where we would be today if we were the only ones looking at it. To your point, because we have the one lens. God sees everything. And to be honest with you, and again, I'm still working through it, but I think oftentimes a lot of us go to picking up the phone and talking to folks versus going to God, because we're able to get the person on the phone immediately. So I'm gonna talk to you and get your advice, or I'm gonna go to somebody that's a professional in the field, who has this platform and this infrastructure, and what they say I'm going to go with because they're the guru in this field. And so what they say, it has to that's me. But just because somebody is a technical expert in that particular field doesn't necessarily mean that it's not even technically, because they're not, but it doesn't mean that they have the final say so.
Facts.
When I go back and look at the school board journey, for a quick example, I had a very identical story, I thought, to one of my mentors, and it just seemed like our paths were going to the same destination. But when the race was over, I'd realized that oftentimes our pathways might look identical, but God, when you were born, even before you're born, he has this little code that he writes that is a little tweak in your story. And so oftentimes, I tell folks, don't get focused or caught up on everybody that's doing the same thing that you're doing. If you know that God is asking you to do whatever that is, then you stay focused. And I think, not to go too far off, but I think that whether it's a new hobby, whether it's a podcast, whether it's writing a book, whether it's real estate or whatever it is you feel led that God is telling you to do, oftentimes a lot of folks, they started like a podcast, right? God told them to start a podcast. They finally mustered up the strength to do it and the obedience, but then they say, hey, I'm going to stop because it's not going in the direction that I thought.
Come on.
And you're comparing your progress and success with somebody else's, but God didn't you don't know what conversation God had with them. If God told you to do it, you do it, even if you're only getting 2 or 3 people.
Come on now.
It's the same thing with fitness, Rob. I mean, so many folks, you think about in January, New Year's resolution, everybody's working out. I was the same way. I had 3 or 4 failed attempts because my purpose for doing it was not deeply rooted. You got to know why you're doing what you're doing.
Come on now.
When it's deeply rooted in something beyond something simplistic or something, cosmetic, like the likes or things of that sort, and you really lock into what God is asking you to do, you ain't, you might be bothered, but you're not going to care if you got 1 or 2 likes. You'll still see the consistency, and over time you understand that everything happens in God's timing. And that's what I'm working on and learning.
And not even by the standards of the world that says, well, if you're not getting a certain amount of likes, or you're not getting a certain amount of following, then you're not actually making an impact.
That's right.
You listen, bro. Come on now. Well, you just preached to somebody. Somebody was sitting over there like, yeah, what are you saying? See, I knew I didn't need all them likes.
Nah.
Is that one person that keeps liking it? I don't know who they are, but you know what? I'm preaching to them. So I'm gonna keep going.
Amen.
I feel you, bro.
Look, don't confuse, and I tell myself this every day. Don't confuse metrics with impact. Because what I found is that there have been people that have reached out to me that might not have even liked a post, but they still see what I'm posting and like, wow, man, this really impacted me.
Yeah.
Like you said, and the conversation we were earlier today, don't do it just to go viral, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're focused on only going viral. And when you're focused solely on that, or even monetization, for example, then you risk cutting that message or cutting corners, and that message isn't what it's supposed to be.
For sure. Or you risk even giving your platform or what God is trying to do through you to everybody who tells you, hey, look, no. I mean, if you tweaked it a little bit, or if you did this like him, or if you just, like nobody wants to hear that. Like if you just did this, then you know what? You would make it big like him. And it's like, okay, so, I mean, just checking again. Did God tell you that's the direction?
Yeah.
No, he told you to go this direction?
Yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't seem to be working, right? But he told you to go that way. Okay, then I would put my money on God's direction, aside from what this guy's telling you, that if you just mimic this person or do this, then you'll go viral. Because the truth is that in what God is doing, viral is totally not enough.
Yeah.
I truly believe, and I said this to a person one time, imagine how you inspire a person. Let's say you inspire a person who takes your message and implements it into their life, and then they turn around, and what comes from that, what transpires after that, reaches millions. Who went viral? Who went viral?
The person
we all went viral.
Yeah, we did.
We all
did.
Because see, if it hadn't been for your seed, then it wouldn't have reached and caught fire for all those people.
That's true.
We're so busy trying to see our seed turn into a field full of, but missing the fact that God just asked you to do that. He didn't tell you what it was going to look like.
That's
he didn't
true.
tell you that it was going, like your expectations said, I'm going, if God called me to it, it's got to look this way. It's got to blow up. It's got to get me a new Hummer or a new Tesla.
Oh yeah.
Like instead of saying, God, I'm here to receive whatever you have for me, to get me from where you want, or taking me to where you're taking me, from here to there.
That's true.
And no matter how that looks, I trust you. Like I trust you.
Like, you ever seen, like, and I found myself in this headspace talking to my wife about it, but like I always say, I don't chase motivation. Motivation is enough to get you started. Inspiration,
come on.
Inspiration is it's the fuel that burns the candle and keeps it lit, even on days in which you don't want to do things, right?
Yes, sir.
And so I think that, and I tell people through my story, and I'm sure you feel the same way, like, because understand that everything that is going on in my life, like the success that I've quote unquote received, from a humanistic perspective, has been God. But you see it now, but you probably don't see the 9 or 10 months of suffering that I had to go through to understand the lessons that God had me go through, the trials and tribulations, so that I can now share, what I went through to help somebody else.
Those moments of him watering your seed.
Yeah. Amen.
Where the water doesn't always feel refreshing.
Yeah.
But what he's doing, and where he begins to water and he begins to prune off stuff so that it can grow, it always doesn't feel good. But what comes from it is so much better than what you could have imagined, because a lot of times our imagination for what we think God's doing is so small compared to what he actually has in the grand scheme of things. It'll truly blow us away because we couldn't have wrote it. It's like, I mean, I saw myself kind of like getting a little bit of following, but I look up and I look back, and it's like it's a ton of people that are actually like inspired by this. Like, wait a minute, I didn't see this. I didn't see this. I didn't see this many listeners. I didn't see this many followers and this many people that would come and like enjoy this. Honestly, I thought that, this podcast would just be like it would be something that people would say, well, Robert has a podcast. I mean, nobody really listens, but he has a podcast. And I was okay with that. Why? Because God said, hey, look, I need you to create this space. Say less. Say less.
Wow.
That's enough for me.
Wow.
So I think that it's in the obedience, it's in the trusting, but it's also in the continuing on. Like, even when it's like, God, I've been at it all night long. I've been at it all night long.
That part. Yeah.
Yeah, at what point do you say enough's enough?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to let me move on to the next best thing? Come on, I know you got something else for me. Come on, I know you got some good things. Come on, give me the good stuff. Give me the good stuff. But it's like, no. He's like, no, I got you exactly where I need you. Like, stay there.
Yeah.
Stay right there. Like, trust me. Continue to stay right there.
Yeah.
And like, that's where he begins to work,
Yeah.
man. He
Wait
works
on the Lord.
Man.
Yeah.
Hey, bro. Like we went to church in here tonight.
Yeah, man. Wow.
Somebody throw me a handkerchief. Man, it's been good, bro. Hey, look, was it worth you driving?
Man,
I don't think it would have been this good if you had been on the other side.
Man, look, it was worth the drive. God is using you to save so many men and so many people that are going to be impacted because you are a gardener.
Yeah.
And so you're planting seeds in the folks that are listening.
Well, if you haven't recognized yet, bro, we're gardeners.
Wow.
Because think about it.
Wow.
I can't do this on my own. I mean,
Wow.
I'm sure God could make a way.
But
He put it in your heart, not
Wow.
just to say yes, but to say, you know what? I'm going to load my family up in a car.
Yeah.
We're going to drive to Charlotte.
Wow.
And I'm going to sit down because I recognize that God has called me to do things, even in spite of like, well, you know, the finances ain't right.
Yeah.
You know, I got a baby on the way.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things life in right now. But you know what? I feel like where God is taking me and what he's going to do through this conversation is going to be greater than what I could imagine. And there's a blessing in that. Not just in like what I'm giving, but just in the obedience of saying, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? He invited me. Let's go. Let's see what God has for me down here.
But I got to give it to my wife, man. Like,
come on.
And you know, shout out to my wife, Juwan Blocker, and my kids. I had to shout her out though because I didn't think that she, you know, like I'm trying to get her buy-in, and she, you know, she now sees what God is doing. She's always saw, but you know, I was all over the place and stuff. But like, you know, I was like, yeah, you know, Rob, you know, he really reached out, and I was inspired by him as well. And so I said, all right, well, you know, he has a virtual option. Let me just do it virtually. My wife said, virtually? She said, no, you're going to go down to Charlotte. And she said, you know, finances aside, even if you have to be the only one that goes, I'll make sure that you go. I thank God that he's given us the finances to be able to make it down here so that we could all go. But if it wasn't for her, in all honesty, like I wanted to be here in person, but I was being more mindful of them and our situation. But she said, no, she said, you got to go in person. And I'm so glad that you opened your home to us, and just like the knowledge that you shared with me, you know, both biblically, but then this brotherhood, man, like, it's invaluable.
Yeah, bro. Well, hey, look, it truly is, and I mean this. It's my pleasure because I recognize that God calls us all to be exactly who He called us to be, and even our connection wasn't just that was random. That was just a coincidence. Absolutely not. So, bro, like I said, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you joining me in this conversation tonight. But before we get out of here, bro, I want you to make sure, outside of shouting your wife out, which is a good first call, because you're right. Like, so far, everything I've learned about your wife, she is truly your accountability partner. She is truly your helpmate.
Indeed.
Like, everything even in our conversation tonight, I was like, hey, look, bro, you got the help you need right in the house. Don't look at me. She knows already, bro. Listen to me. Her discernment is on another level. But more importantly, how can people connect with you? You know, after listening to this and just being like, bro, like that was, bro, I'm fired up. Like,
I appreciate that.
I appreciate not only his conversation, but what he's doing. And I want to know how I can tap in with him, because I need an accountability partner.
Sure.
I need somebody who will hold me to a standard that maybe I don't even see in myself yet. Maybe I don't see myself the way God sees me, or the way he'll see me from the lens that I'm looking through. Because I only see myself as this kid from Maryland who grew up in the exact same place you grew up, who wasn't seen by anybody, who wasn't known by anybody, but is trying to prove his worth to everybody, and needs somebody like you to be the person he needed when he, what does my shirt say? Be who you needed when you were young.
I love it.
And how many of us need somebody to come back and help guide us to who we needed when we were younger?
I'll raise my hand to that.
There we go. Yeah. Both of us. And so, how can people tap in with you? How can they find you? How can they connect with what you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, just my name, Juwan Blocker, Blocker. would love, a DM or, a message, and I'll reach out and would love to connect. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. We appreciate you guys for coming and tuning in with us today too. For those that are watching or those that are listening, thank you so much. I want to thank all of those who continue to support and continue to just be a part of this community, continue to support however it is. I pray you guys will be blessed in that journey. I pray that you guys will know that God's walking with you in that journey. And that regardless how it feels, what's going on in your life, that you'll know that your story is never over with. You matter. Your story matters. It mattered. And that know that, like, and I love to leave these episodes with just a reminder that my brother, the late great Chad Height, who was with the Rabbit Hole show, would always say that, we all have struggles. We all have a story. We all have things that have gone on in our life that may feel like it disqualifies us from moving forward. But know that you are not alone. The good news is you are not alone. So with that, you guys be blessed. Love you guys. We'll catch you on the next episode. All right? Talk to you guys soon.
And that wraps up another episode of God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm Justin Moore, and we want to give a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in and being part of our community. Your support means the world to us, and we hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. If what you heard resonated with you, please consider subscribing or leaving a review on today's video. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to connect with us on social media at God's Glory and Men's Real Stories for updates, new episode clips, and to share your thoughts on today's episode. We love hearing from you. If this conversation happened to shed a light on past experiences of yours that may have been happy moments or maybe hurtful moments, feel free to keep the conversation going in the comments below, so as a community we can listen, pray with you, or point you to helpful resources. Join us next time for another great episode, and until then, let's give God the glory for all He's doing in our stories.